what they did was really knock down our twin towers, yes?
Tell us about relationships and money. How does an abundance or a lack of money affect the way we as black men and women relate to each other?
Okay, well, let's go again. I like to put this in the historical context. See, when the enslavers came into Africa, what they did was really knock down our twin towers, yes? And that twin tower essentially was the female tower in that relationship. And this was quite crucial because our societies always worked in cooperation, not in competition, yes? So we always had a matriarchal society. So when the enslavers came, who were largely patriarchal and not wanting to recognize the strength of the women, it was inherent in them that they would separate us and keep us apart, yes? Hello?
Yes, I guess I'm tuning in.
Even during slavery, the main agitators were women, although men went out and, agitated. But through slavery, see, when the women became pregnant, it was because she was enslaved, her child became enslaved. So it wasn't through the male that the male would sire many, many children. Even, they wouldn't say, well, just because you sired this child, that child would become enslaved. It was through the women. What we have to understand that there's been a conscious effort basically to keep us apart and obviously to keep us against each other. Like I said, if you look at any, go back to Egypt and look at any of the carvings and the insignias, there's always a male and female energy. So this is critical as well. So as I said, we're not in competition. We have to start looking in cooperation. And if you look at the word material, that comes from meta, woman, yes? Inheritance, it is, yes? So the female line is very, very critical. But the point of having a balanced relationship is that we have roles within the relationship. So the roles are the males are there to protect and provide for us, yes, the family, and it's the female role to then take that provision, bless that to grow it, and then to bring that back into the home to nurture the home. So you find that it's the women, so the men would go and, for example, plant the seed, grow the yam, bring the yam to the woman, and then would, agree a price to pay the man X amount. She would then take that produce, go to the market and sell that. The excess that she has, she buys some more seed, gives that to the man, and then the rest would go into the home. So that's a very basic example, if you like, yes? But this is our role, so this is why we need the balance between us. So that's why sometimes men would say, oh, this woman, you're looking at a man that can provide and protect you. But because we've forgotten our roles, we're now told, oh, women, we can do everything that we want, because I've been down the women's lib route as well, and yes, we don't need a man, but we do, because without that balance, we don't have the proper energy. We cannot do it on our own. So, this is what the 100-year plan is talking about. So I'm talking about rebuilding or building those foundations, male-female energy. So the male and female energy is, like I say, if you look my parents are from Jamaica, you look at who runs the markets in Jamaica, it's women. Yeah. You go to Africa, Ghana, it's the women that runs the market, yes? It's because of that energy, that's our role, yes? So this is why women will look to men who can protect them and who can provide. But because we've forgotten how to invest and grow that money, then we kind of lose the plot of it. So it looks as though we're just looking for men on a materialistic point, but it isn't. It's because we use that to nurture and grow.
How do we then? Because obviously money is one of those things that for some people, it does affect many relationships.
It's not that it affects it. so much as the expectation.
That comes with
I
it.
would say, first of all, you have to look at yourself. So if you're in an unsatisfactory relationship, or you've been in unsatisfactory relationships, it's about you.
Yeah.
What is it about you that has attracted that person into your life, or those people into your life? So if you want something different, you have to start attracting differently, and you have to start working on yourself. So a lot of it is to do with decluttering. So you have to declutter a lot of that emotional baggage, a lot of physical baggage, and a lot of material baggage as well.
Okay.
So you will get what you want. Yes. So, I don't want someone to beat me. I don't want someone who does this. I don't want this. No, what do you want? So you can write a whole list of things that you don't want. And then on the other side, write what you do right. Write the antithesis of that. Yeah? And then you will get what you want.
Okay. So,
so you have to look at yourself.
So to people who are currently in relationships now where money might be a big issue for them, to the point where they might even be considering breaking up because they can't reconcile the differences around money, what advice would you give to them?
That might be the best thing for them to do, because money is not the issue. If there's a money problem, if you have a money problem, money is not the problem. Yes? If you think you have a money problem, money is not the problem. It's to do with your psychology. So you can use that as an excuse, because you take the money away. All right, take the situation. If you're in a relationship and your partner says to you, and Cobia, £50,000 worth of debt, what would your reaction be?
Oh, if he comes
that you didn't know about.
Oh, we can talk about that. There must be a reason. If you haven't told me, there's a reason why. So
okay.
Let's
and
talk.
If he comes to you again the next day and says, and Cobia, I've got £50,000 in a bank account that I never told you about, how would you feel about that?
We can most certainly talk about that too.
You see, but it's the same feeling. It doesn't matter if it's plus or minus. The key thing is about the trust.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
So you think, well, why has he told me that he's got all this, or why has he told me that he's got this money, or why has he got this money and we're struggling?
Yeah.
You think? Yeah?
So
we're on sex now.
Sex.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sex. Very, very important subject. Why is it important? There's a book called Think and Grow Rich. You might have come across that.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. By an author called Napoleon Hill.
Okay.
And he was assigned this project by Andrew Carnegie, because Andrew Carnegie got quite wealthy, partly through Rothschild's money as well, I must say.
Why does that name sound so familiar?
Because he's built, he left a lot of his money to public goods when he died. So he built lots of libraries and public institutions.
Okay.
He made his money through building railways, through steel in America, essentially. But he started off as a poor Scottish man that went to America and did really well. So he wanted Napoleon Hill to really do a survey, if you like, of wealthy people in America at that time, wealthy and I suppose important people, and find out what were the kind of common denominator to wealth, really. Finding out, well, if there is a common denominator, how anyone can use this, what were the characteristics that you needed, what were the kind of skills, if there were connections, all these kinds of things he wanted to really put in a big pot, if you like, and see what came out. So Napoleon Hill took on this challenge, if you like. He was doing it, he wasn't getting paid to do it, and it took him quite a few years to do it. But anyway, as I said, he wrote this book, Think and Grow Rich, and it basically came down to what we're talking about in terms of the psychology of the wealth. I mean, in terms of making plans, setting goals, being persistent, just kind of standing up and doing those things. But one chapter that he had was called Sex Transmutation.
Sex transmutation.
Sex transmutation. Right. So, like I said, one of the areas of people activity is sex. So, having read Napoleon Hill, having read Dr. Francis Kurzweil's thing, looking at the whole issue around sex, having read Neely Fuller, because he has a chapter on sex as well in terms of the 9 areas of people activity, I had to kind of sift all this information together. So I'm looking at Napoleon Hill with sex transmutation, and I thought, why has he put this chapter in this book? Because when I read the book first probably about 15, 18 years ago, and it kind of, I read it and yeah, it made sense to it, and I left it. And then, doing this work I'm doing, and then I looked at this book again, I'm saying, well, really, let me kind of dissect, because again, I read everything I can, I read as much as I can, taking as much information as I can, but I always try and relate it to our people and what, my situation and my people's situation. So what does this mean for us? How does this really affect us? How can I use this information to take us to the next level of it? Recently, and started to look at sex, because I was on, what happened, I was speaking on another station, I can't remember which one it was, and an issue came up about, so I was talking about relationships and money, that's it. And I was talking about relationships and money in terms of, again, in terms of the 100-year plan, and in terms of how we need to organise ourselves around money. And this issue always comes up, does money break up relationships? And I'm saying, well, it's not the money that breaks up relationships, it must be the relationship, because if this room was filled with money, it wouldn't do anything unless you did something with it. Because in and of itself, it has no power, no energy, unless you do something with it, So that made me start looking at this whole thing about relationships, but then come down, obviously relationships are about sex as well. So sex transmutation, so what was so important about sex transmutation that Napoleon Hill had to write about? This was in the 1920s that he wrote this book. Transmutation, so I had to look up transmutation. Transmutation is basically changing one thing into another. So one of the definition in the dictionary was using the thing about alchemy. So what the alchemists do, the alchemists attempt to transmute base metals like lead in lead and bronze into gold and silver. That's the whole point of alchemy. Alchemy, as we know, chemistry, chem, comes from chemist. So this has, so this got me thinking now, all right, so this has something deeper to do with us, So sex transmutation. So I'm looking at sex, I'm looking at Dr. Africa. What did he say about sex? Now, Dr. Africa saying sex, the purpose of sex is procreation, creation, Sex transmutation for Napoleon Hill is about creation, is about creative power. So what he's saying essentially in Think and Grow Rich is that sex, the motivation actually is not sex itself, but the motivation and desire for sex is one of the most powerful human desires and motivators, yes? So if you're using sex or using that energy, that motivation to do something creative with it, that is when you're going to the moon. So what he's saying is that the people that he talked to, they waited, or they didn't realize until they were in their 40s and 50s the power of that sexual drive, the power of using or transforming that sexual drive that they'd been using as teenagers in their 20s and 30s to sow their wild oats, to have, different women and dally with it. When they started to concentrate that energy into creative power, they went clear. So I said, all right. So if sex is that that's just one of the things about creative power, yeah? So hold that there. So I'm looking at Dr. Africa now, and he says, the purpose of sex is creation, procreation, not recreation. So we're using it as recreation. So it's dissipating. We're wasting energy. We're wasting. Yeah. Right. And it's just that if we use that sexual drive rather than just engage in sexual intercourse as a recreation, and use the energy either for procreation, which is what it's there for, or to enhance our creativity, that we would make greater strides. But in terms of the relationships, I believe, between black male and black women, that the women are the economic force. So it's not just about creating wealth for wealth's sake. It's about nurturing the family, you know, and nurturing the children and nurturing the future generations. That the women are the key. Because again, if we talked about inheritance, and the word inheritance, if you break it down, it's in, her, it. Yeah? It's in her. For the women, it's the mitochondrial DNA that you follow. And that is the key within a family. So it comes through your mother, it comes through the woman. So the woman is key. But in the white male patriarchal society, they don't recognize that. They do everything they can to discredit women, going back to religion as well, you know, denouncing women. They had the witch hunt, you know, the Catholic Church had the witch hunt, burnt how many women at the stake. And as I said, when they came into our societies, they, you know, went to break down the women, break us down. They knocked down that tower. But if you look at any of the societies that we're in and that we've created, it is the women that are the economic force. Certainly in Jamaica, the Higglers, those people are women. Yeah? Over here, most of the partners are run by women. Yeah? Most, you know, majority of people I know with a home and a house that they've bought today in the black society, in the black community, so-called, it's the women that have been the driving force behind that. But women certainly are behind their men, but it's still an equal partnership, but they are, you know, the driving force behind their men. And I think, you know, there's a role for men, there's a role for women, and we don't want men being women. We certainly don't want men effeminized, you know, this whole kind of effeminization thing that's going on. Yeah? We don't want that. We want men to be men and women to be women. You know, we've had to adopt different roles because of the intervention in the system that we're in. Yeah? You know, our men have been taken from us either through prison, through drugs, you know, through guns now. Yeah? We're not allowed to form relationships. Men are not allowed to go out and work and support their families or, you know, protect their families. You know, when men tried to protect their families, they were killed, mutilated. You know, women were left to bring up, you know, our families were separated. Women were left to bring up the children on their own. And yet those women were then left to bring up children and make them better slaves. You know, because we didn't want to see the men hurt. So in detriment to us, what we were saying to our young men is, don't, you know, be good, don't do this, don't rock the boat, don't da-da-da-da, you know. So we were creating better slaves for the master. Yeah? So those are the things that we have to look at, and that's the things that we have to address. But I said it comes down to us educating ourselves and acting on that. Yeah, educating, forming relationships with one another so that we are examples to our families and to our children that are coming up and to our wider families. Because again, it takes a village to raise a child. It's not just the responsibility of the two parents that have that. It's the responsibility of everyone in the community. And we can see that that's breaking down now when I can't talk to a young man on the road and tell him that he's misbehaving. He wants to come and tell me to F him, you know.
All right, so imagine you have a family, husband and wife, and they have 2 children. How would they start to begin to create wealth for themselves? What kind of investment vehicles, as you say, should they choose?
Right. I'm not a financial advisor in the sense that I don't tell people how what to invest in that sense. Yes.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest with any family that's really serious about creating wealth and building wealth in their life, which any family can do, is really the first thing is, and I always come back to this, is really find out what your purpose is. What is your purpose as a family, and how will money help you to get to some of those things in your purpose? So, for example, the family, as you say, if it's husband and wife and 2 children, or a couple and 2 children, depending on the ages of the children, they might want them to go to school, or they may want them to travel, 3 times a year. So you list all the things that you want, yes, and have no limits on that. So if you want a bigger house, typically people I speak to are quite modest actually in what they want. So they want maybe a bigger house, maybe a different car, like say, have some savings, and just do some of the things they want to do as a family.
Yeah.
That's quite modest. But once you start writing that down, once you start creating your purpose, and this is one of the things I work with on an individual basis, or with families or with groups, is to really find out how to write your purpose. And there's like a little technique that I have that you can find that. Then once you find that, then you find out what the best vehicle is.
Is that a technique? Sorry to cut you. Is that a technique you could share with us?
It is a bit long to share.
It's a bit long. Okay, then.
But
we'll skip that. Yeah.
I will hopefully come up to Birmingham and share that with you.
Yeah, most certainly.
But so, for example, if a family has young children that they want to send to university in 10 years' time, for example, there's a particular vehicle, for example, like second-hand endowment policies. So once a policy has been created and somebody sells their policy, it's possible to buy that policy, because a policy doesn't cease because you've sold it. It only ceases at the mature date. And there's a whole market where you can look at policies, you can decide what the premium is, when the maturity date is, and you can start planning your life around the maturity dates of these policies.
Yeah.
So, for example, you could buy a policy today that matures in 10 years' time, so in 10 years' time, that policy, when it matures, you're going to get 20,000 or 10,000 or 15, and then you buy another policy next year that matures in 10 years. So you can do this for the next 5 years, and so from year 10 to 15, every year you'd have a policy maturing at maybe 10,000, 15,000. So you can start, gearing, if you like, a future event now, yes?
Yeah.
So that when your children start university, you know that you're getting 10,000 in year 10. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, for me it does. I hope it makes sense to you out there, listeners.
Yeah, well, that's just one vehicle. So the first rule of investing is, do not invest money that you can't afford to lose.
Okay. Yeah?
Do not invest money that you can't afford to lose. So you don't start investing your mortgage money, your rent money, your food money, yes? You start setting up, and I spoke before about the savings law and setting up the 7 different savings accounts, yeah? You must have an investment saving account, yes, that you put money in that you are strictly going to use for investment. The second rule of investing is have a money management system. So, for example, if you have £5,000 in your investment account, you do not put that 5,000 on one item or one vehicle or buy one stock with that, yeah?
Yeah.
You pace it out so that you maybe, 10% you spend on, I don't know, stock, for example, or, you limit it to so much per month, yeah? So that you're in the game for a longer period. Okay. And then any gains that you make, you reinvest that back into your investment account, but you also put it into some of your other accounts as well. Yeah? You start managing it differently. Because investment is a long-term thing. And I also spoke about investment in terms of the couple, because, as I say, the male role, from an African point of view, is to provide and to protect the family. Yes? To provide for the family and to protect the family. The female role is to use that provision to invest and to nurture the family. So you find that women are better investors, if you like, than men.
I'm glad you said that.
Typically, because that's our role. If you look at, I mean, my parents come from Jamaica, for example, so you go to the market in Jamaica and it's women that run the market.
I'm glad you said, because I was just going to touch upon that. Whenever I've been to the Caribbean or Africa, you always see the women managing the money.
Yes.
You see them out in the markets. They're very active. Very active.
So that is our role, because we know how to follow rules. I mean, even in the stock market here, I go to many stock market courses here, and men say, women follow the rules. This is what you do, A, B, C, D. Men tend to kind of jump. They want to do this. They don't want to do the paper trading and da-da-da. I mean, risk is involved in everything, but men tend to not to want to follow the rules for whatever reason. But their roles typically, so again, if you go to Ghana, women are running the markets there. You find Nigeria, it's the same thing. And we had a system here called the partner system in the 50s and 60s.
Mm-hmm. My mum used to run one, actually.
Exactly. Do you know any men that ran a partner system?
No, not at all.
No, it's always the women. So this is our natural way of being. So it's to work in cooperation with each other. Yeah, the Western system has tried to divide us away from each other, so that we're looking as though we're in competition and women are just looking at men for money. Yes, we are looking at them for money to provide so that we can create, so we can invest it to make more for the family.
Yes.
So does that make sense?
Yeah, most certainly.
Yeah. So those are really the two crucial rules. And the other rule for investing is invest in things that you love. So as I said, there's so many different vehicles out there. And, I'll mention a couple. So we look at property, it's a typical vehicle that people understand. I mentioned the stock market. I mentioned second-hand endowment policies, art, there's gold. There's all kinds of ways that you can invest. But you have to really find what you love. And there's no reason as a family, the family example that you use, there's no reason that you can invest in more than one thing. Yeah?
Okay.
So if you're going to buy artwork, for example, buy original artwork by African artists, that you're going to enjoy having and looking, but also that's going to increase in value, yes, over the years.
Uh-huh.
If it's in a car, make sure it's a car that's going to, increase in value. I heard of somebody the other day that bought one of these old cars and did it up and sold it for like 10 times the amount that he got it for. But there's lots of different ways that you can invest. As I say, it's finding out what you want and why you want to invest.